Now to the light. People ask me, what is unitive awareness? What does it look like? Well, here I want to show you a couple other things first. Let's talk about growing up, because we're going to get to this, and then I've got some passages I want to show you. I want to talk about growing up, okay? Because I have an illustration. I like to talk about Taysom Hill from Saints football. That's fun to me. It's fun to watch. I started when I moved to New Orleans back in 2015. I started watching the Saints, and this guy right here, he's like played every position that you can possibly play. And so he's done everything. You can look at the stats on him, and he's played fullback 22 times. He's played quarterback 41 times. He's played wide receiver 44 times. Okay? He's going to field goal block 48 times, punt return 51 times, kick return 65 times. He's been a tight end 85 times, kickoff coverage 77 times, slot receiver 72 times, punt coverage 67 times. He's played all these different positions. So he has the highest number, the highest, in my opinion, on that team for sure, the highest agency arena participatory attunement with the game of football of anybody on the team. He might not do any one of those things the best on the team, but aggregately, he does the most. Now, say you take someone like this and you make them the quarterback. So he played quarterback in high school, so they started using him as quarterback as a professional. Well, what's it take to be a quarterback at a professional level? I would imagine that's pretty daunting, okay? So when you're made quarterback, you automatically have participatory knowing of what it's like to be quarterback, because just like a baby being born is now participating in the world, anybody can stand there and have the ball hiked to them, anybody. But it doesn't mean that you know what to do with it when the ball gets hiked to you, okay? And then there's perspectival knowing. What's it like to stand in formation as the quarterback and have the responsibility on your shoulders of doing what a quarterback does? So without any training, without anything else, if you just put the person in the position, they automatically have awareness of participatory knowing of what it's like to be the quarterback and perspectival knowing of what it's like to be the quarterback. Now, that is awareness, but what they lack potentially is participatory capacity. So I'm drawing a distinction between awareness and capacity, okay, for participation and perspectival knowing. So you have perspectival awareness, maybe not perspectival capacity. So procedural knowing comes in here. The third kind of knowing comes in, and the capacity for enhanced participatory knowing and enhanced perspectival knowing is built through procedural knowing, which is built through rehearsals. So how does this relate to grow up? Okay. You could say that being selected for and placed in the position of quarterback is like a wake up. It's like a wake up call. Oh, if I'm the quarterback, I need to grow into this position because I'm not a professional quarterback. I only played quarterback in high school. So now I need to grow participatory attunement and perspectival optimal grip from the quarterback position. And I'm going to use procedural knowing to feed into those two kinds of knowing to help me with that. Each time you have a wake-up cycle, your growing up cycle is where you're going to use procedural knowing. You're going to work on your procedural knowing to be able to operate at the capacity that matches what you can now see or what you're now aware of. I'm now aware of this, but I don't know how to behave with this awareness. How do I behave in an optimal way with this awareness? So I'm trying to use that as an example of what it would take. Like, let's just pretend that you got selected to play any position. Let's say you're selected to play quarterback on a professional NFL team. What are you going to do? You're probably not qualified. So now that you have the awareness of this reality, you have to work hard to grow into it fast. So every time you have a wake-up cycle, there is incumbent upon you to figure out what it is you need to do to become what is commensurate with that level, with the new level of awareness. So you're born again, you can see the kingdom of God in a new way, Now, how do I grow into a level of capacities that is commensurate with that new capacity of awareness, with that new ability, with that new level of awareness? And so when we talk about stages of faith, we're not talking about what people believe or how people see things necessarily. We're also talking about the capacities that they have. What capacity do you have to work with yourself and other people as intertwined with your perception and participation? And of course, propositional knowing is always the currency of the other three kinds of knowing, and it must serve in service to the other three kinds of knowing. And it's incumbent upon us to be good stewards and custodians of the propositional arena so that it doesn't become inflated with things that don't map accurately back to the other three kinds of knowing. In the four kinds of knowing, propositions are a huge help. That's what separates us, one of the many things that separates us from the animal kingdom. But they can also be a huge hindrance because we can create entire worlds that are just completely made up out of thin air with what equates to monopoly money, Dungeons and Dragons. We just make up shared fictions that we can then live in mentally. Okay, and then we get really bad at deciphering what's the shared fiction and what's actually reality. So we want to be good custodians of this. Now, I want to introduce you to another concept. When people ask me about unitive awareness, what I usually tell them is John 1:9, not 1 John 1:9, but John 1:9, Acts 17:28, and Hebrews 1:3. And John 1:9, this was that true light which lighteth every man that cometh into the world. And that is what is in us. You become aware of what is in you. This true light is in you, and you need to wake up to it. You need to wake up to the light that's already there. Acts 17:28, for in him we live and move and have our being, as certain also of your own poets have said, for we are also his offspring. So the next thing you're aware of what are we in? What are we in? So when you increase awareness, you have more awareness of what is in us, the light that lighteth every man that cometh into the world, that's in you. And you wake up to that gradually and more. Each wake up cycle that you have, you wake up more to that light that is already in you. And then there's another aspect of what are we in? And each wake up cycle, you wake up more and more to that which we are in. In him we live, move, and have our being. Hebrews 1:3, he is upholding, who being in the brightness of his glory and the express image of his person, upholding all things by the word of his power. So there is an increased awareness of the undergirding power behind all things. Like you understand it's the same engine running everything. I've talked before about being on a cruise ship and how sometimes you forget that you're on a cruise ship, but during a quiet moment, you can kind of still hear the hum of the engine through your feet. And there's this quiet oh yeah, I'm on a boat in the middle of Gulf of Mexico. I'm not in a building on the ground anymore. Kind of feels like I am because I'm operating like I am. And we're in here doing karaoke or listening to a comedian or whatever we're doing. It just feels like a normal place. But oh yeah, I'm on a boat. This awareness of the undergirding power behind and in and through all things. It's impossible to increase awareness in all three of these areas and not see the connectedness between them. And like Ian McGilchrist says, the relationship is more fundamental than the relata. So there's a relationship to all things. And also when you look at the three transcendents of good, true, and beautiful, we in the left hemisphere, west hemisphere, left hemisphere of the brain, and with our propositionally reductive type of theology, like our systematic theology that we have up here on the shelf, we tend to approach things truth first, and I think that's a big problem. Jordan Hall just pointed this problem out recently in a video that I was listening to. When you take the three transcendents, we should be approaching with beauty first, like charitably. Charity is greater than faith and hope. We should be approaching with beauty first, because beauty sees how everything is connected and sees everything as a whole and sees how something can reveal reality to you. A painting is beautiful because it can cause you to feel what it was like to be a certain place. It is revealing to you, and it's inviting for further revelation. And we see everything is together and connected. Whereas truth makes distinctions between things. We're semantically disambiguating everything to find out what is truth and what is false. So beauty is analogous to relationship. So we should be approaching with relationship first rather than with trying to semantically disambiguate everything first. There's going to be a correlation between what is good, true, and beautiful. So when I say not to prioritize propositional truthing, sorting it out, making distinctions, I'm not saying don't have truth as important. But I would suggest that, as we've said in our other videos, that we should make truth, we should see it more as a verb, as truthingness. So there's some passages I want to highlight on the side here. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so we can see these passages. And that is Psalm 36:9. For with thee is the fountain of life, in thy light shall we see light. You ever heard the analogy that the fish don't know of the water because they're in it? There's a component to light that's like that. We're so in it that we can't see it, and you have to wake up to it at some point. In 2 Corinthians 3:18, but we all with open face beholding as in a glass the glory of the Lord are changed into the same image from glory to glory, even as by the Spirit of the Lord. Continual, ongoing change. Colossians 2:9-10. For in him dwelleth all the fullness of the Godhead bodily, and ye are complete in him, which is the head of all principality and power. There's something that's already there. There's something that's already there that you need to wake up to, that we need to wake up to. And we tend to think it's outside of ourselves and we need to find it, right? Philippians 2:15, that you may be blameless and harmless, the sons of God, without rebuke, in the midst of a crooked and perverse nation, among whom ye shine as lights in the world. So this same light that is inside you can also shine out from inside you. And that would tie into the showing up. Getting that, because right now that light, it's in you. It's in every man, that light that lighteth every man that cometh into the world. But we have hidden that light under all kinds of enculturation and egoic attachment. So the more that we uncover that light, the more we dig off and get rid of egoic attachment, paradigmatic capture, ideological possession. The more we shed this kind of stuff, the more we can shine as lights in the world to other people. That light can actually shine out from us as well. And so over here in the lower left-hand side, I made this comment. We have the responsibility to be the light that we are. In other words, it's not optional, especially if you're claiming Christ as a name, like I'm a Christian. It's not optional. You have the responsibility. When I say to be, like doing, being, and becoming, you have the responsibility to up your being game, to be commensurate with the light that's in you. With the responsibility to be the light. In other words, you need to be becoming in a greater capacity to match the light that's in you, to live up to it, to attain to it. Like Paul says in Philippians chapter 3, that I may attain to the resurrection. Not as though I had already attained, we're already made, whatever he says. You get the idea. But that's what we should be doing. Striving to continue to attain a level that is commensurate with the light that's in us. Every waking cycle gives us a new capacity of being into which we must grow. So constantly growing into the last glimpse of light that we've had, grow into that and learn how to embody that. This already but not yet thing. Look at this story of what is commonly called the prodigal son. A guy leaves home, and I agree with some people who say this should be called something else, like you could call it the tale of two brothers or something like that, okay? But here's what I want to focus on. This particular aspect I want to focus on today. A young son, or a son who's just reached adulthood, he goes ahead and cashes out on his inheritance from his dad, and he takes off with it. I'm going to go live the life. And of course, he spends his life on riotous living, all sorts of, lasciviousness and whatever. And he winds up living in a pig pen, eating corn husks. Now, to tell this story to Jews, you see, pigs are unclean animals. It'd be like the last place you want to be is like hanging out with a bunch of pigs. They're not considered clean in the Mosaic law. They're not kosher. So then later he winds up going back to his dad's house, and his dad opens him with, receives him, welcomes him with open arms, kills the fatted calf and all this. It seems like the brother's a little jelly. What I want you to realize in this story, now bear this in mind here, this whole thing of the light that's already inside you. Bear this in mind. when you hear this parable. Because what I think is going on, one of the things that it's showing us in Luke 15:17, when he came to himself, there's something you realize inside you, not external, not an external locus of authority. Come to yourself. You realize something inside you. He's like, how many hired servants of my father's have bread enough to spare, and I perish with hunger? And that same phrase is used in Acts chapter 12, verse 11. And when Peter was come to himself, he said, now I know of a surety that the Lord hath sent his angel and hath delivered me out of the hand of Herod and from all the expectation of the people of the Jews. It's interesting in the Bible how when things happen to people, they're not completely sure what's going on while it's happening. Come to himself. So he wasn't sure what had all happened. So anyway, so what he does, the prodigal son, he returns to what he always had in the first place. One of the reasons the Bible talks to us in narrative form and tells us stories and parables and things like that is because you can continually unpack morals of the story. Many. There's not like a limited number of morals of the story. It's not like a doctrinal collection of morals of the story that you can get from a parable and then it has to stop there. It's limitless. It depends on what you can see. And one of the aspects of this story is that what he left looking for is something he always had. And Christians are bad about this. The light that lighteth every man that cometh into the world. We leave looking for this thing. And we sing songs about this God that is out there somewhere that we have to go find and pray to. And what we don't realize is that the thing that we went out looking for and praying to and kneeling down to and singing to and listening to sermons to try to get, that we had it the whole time. It's always been there. And when you can see it, you kind of feel stupid for like ever searching for it elsewhere. But that is part of the process. Narrow is the way. Seeking you shall find. Knocking it shall be answered to you. Few there be that find it. And one of the reasons few find it is because you're looking externally. You're looking around. You forget the light that lighteth every man that cometh into the world is there. It's he which worketh in you, both the willing to do of his good pleasure. And ye are complete in him.